Hi, I'm Neil Druckmann, creative director.
And I'm Troy Baker, I played Joel.
And I'm Ashley Johnson, and I play Ellie.
So first cinematic here, you'll see as we get to the end, I mean, this opening image, we wanted to match what we did at the end with image of Ellie.
Tommy, listen to me. He is the contract.
I think it's such an interesting thing to start off with, not only in the past, but also to start off basically.
Yeah, that's one of the things we were discussing as we're iterating on this opening sequence, because it used to be, it was all seen through Joel's eyes. But then it became a lot more interesting to think of it as you're seeing it through Sarah's eyes, because Sarah is really kind of, the whole game is about this relationship between Joel and Ellie, but here Sarah is kind of embodies what their relationship is going to eventually become.
And that was probably one of the hardest roles to cast too, with Sarah.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people that came in, and I love that this scene was, you know, that was one of the audition scenes. And it was so amazing when Hannah came in that it just, I mean, what you're seeing right now, that was the chemistry, and she was amazing. It's like, kind of like a younger Dakota Fanning. Just, there's an old soul behind those eyes.
Yeah, and she could turn it on and off between each take.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, she was crazy. She's amazing.
It's always a little awkward, right? You have a 12-year-old someone on the set, and you're doing this pretty dark stuff.
Especially with the way that we work, too.
All right, let's hold off on some of the jokes today, guys.
Good. You started helping out with the mortgage then.
Yeah, you wish.
And this piece of music, actually, we were struggling to find which piece to play here. And then Gustavo wrote this thing for the VGAs just to play before we showed the trailer, and right away I heard it, I was like, that's got to go in the opening. This is the theme, kind of like the relationship between Joel and his daughter that later becomes the theme between Joel and Ellie.
Hallican Drops,
Pelican Drops.
the name of the band on her t-shirt. And where did you get that?
My daughter came up with that. My 2.5-year-old daughter named one of her dolls that. And we're searching for a name for a band. I'm like, I got a name for a band.
So this is going to be the first time that I've ever seen this scene. This was one specifically that I really didn't want to once we did it. And when we first talked about doing this in the very, very beginning, I knew this scene was going to come. And it was, I told you, I was like, give me a heads up when this day comes, because it's not going to be a good one.
Well, the thing with this scene, it's a super difficult scene to shoot. The first time we shot it, we did like at least 15 takes or something crazy like that. And then we thought we had it in the can. And
Well, I thought,
well, no, we all thought. We thought we came back to work and we started putting it in. And for me, there was just something that was, I felt like we could convey the same amount of emotion with less.
Yeah.
And it was a hard thing to tell Troy because everybody put so much into it, and it's like, we got to do it again.
Well, I remember that
We got to
day
come back to this.
when you came back and you told me that we have to do this again. Obviously, you know, you'll see why what we're talking about. But this is the defining moment for Joel. This is where he draws that line in the sand, where he has few moral lines left to cross. I'm so amazed with how well Hannah did, and
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult to watch just on the mocap stage. And we actually had people, after a few takes, leave the set. They were like, I can't watch this anymore, and they just took off. But from a story standpoint, it's so important to show just what the violence does and how it like rips apart this family.
well, then especially a lot of times in video games, you see blatant violence, but when you personify it and you put it on a face, especially that young face, and you see the devastation that just one life lost can do. And it's just, I mean, this was such a hard day. Such a hard day for both of us. I mean, it was exhausting for her. It was exhausting for me.
So the opening credits, the thing with the opening, initially we didn't want to do opening credits, didn't even have the idea for this, but the jump felt too sudden to go from Sarah dying to then 20 years later.
And making up.
We found that when people watch it in succession, they're not paying attention when we start introducing Tess in the world because they're still recovering from Sarah dying. So we're like, okay, well, let's have this opening sequence that can kind of help bridge the gap. And just had the idea of just seeing this time-lapse video of fungus growing, because so much of the disease and the outbreak is based on this cordyceps fungus that spread through spores. So we contacted a group at Sony San Diego who did this whole opening sequence for us, and they actually got these fungal kits where they grew fungus like in their bathrooms and filmed this over like days to produce this thing.
So everything you're seeing is actually it's real. It's not CG. It's not.
It's all
it's all organic.
except for the spores at the end, which are CG. Everything is real. This whole journey is like a dreamlike state, and you constantly see people waking up, and you see this multiple time with Joel, and it's as if he's like remembering the past. He's always having these bad dreams throughout the game.
That was always something that we had to keep in mind when we did this scene, because we shot this before we shot Sarah dying scene. So it's kind of like we knew that those were going to be in one way or another kind of butted up against each other. But this is such a great thing. Again, this was in the audition thing that we did when we were trying to find Tess. And when Annie walked in, it was just like, she walked in as Tess. We saw a lot of different people for that. And this was just such a great, because the relationship you see from going from Sarah and Joel to now Joel and Tess, it's just, I don't know, you see everything, like the house that he was in before was nicer. He looked nicer, and it's not just the years have passed, but those years that have passed haven't been
This also
kind.
gets into something interesting for me as a writer, which is you have a certain notion of characters or how you want the structure to be, and then once it's interpreted through actors like Troy, it changes. Like I've always imagined as Joel doesn't really care for Tess. He's completely shut down, and Troy treated it differently, which is I think he really cares for Tess, and even though he might not show it, and we just kind of embrace that. And you kind of see that later when Tess gets infected. That wasn't how the scene was originally envisioned, that Joel has such a reaction, but it became a lot more interesting to own that.
Well, and also how much this relationship changed over, I mean, time and different writing iterations and just conversations that we had about this. Even, you know, within the last month or so, we've had conversations about this. It's like, what is their relationship? Because we never define it. I think anybody else would have put it on the nose, they're lovers or whatever. There was one note that you gave, it's like, for one specific take, and it said, let's just assume that there was a fight last night over what, we don't know. This is that moment afterwards. So it was like this awkward tension between the two of us. But there's no like loving embrace, there's no kiss that Joel and Tess have. It's just such an interesting relationship.
And the challenge was to try to, how much can we convey just through nonverbal interaction?
Right.
Our first torture scene.
And it's with the lovely Robin Atkin Downs, which I was just joking and saying that it's not a Naughty Dog game if Robin isn't getting the shit kicked out of him.
He's been in every game since Uncharted 1.
And we just put him through the ringer on this one. Poor guy.
It was important to show just how far Joel has come, from the father you see in the opening sequence to here is a man that is willing to torture someone to just get
But it's
what
so
is essentially
interesting.
money in this world.
Right, but it's interesting because he's not, he's like that brutal enforcer. It's kind of like that scene in LA Confidential where he's Russell Crowe. She's running the show. She's the dominating one, and I'm just brought in to be the muscle.
She's the brains of the operation.
Yeah, clearly.
Stop!
Quit your squirming.
That's all Robin's expressions too. It's so great. They did such a great job with the facial.
Yeah, it's important to note also, all the facial is hand animated. We don't use any facial mocap. We find that we get better results with our animators.
And it almost becomes one-to-one. Yeah. It's just genius. Here it is. Wait for it.
Give me a week.
You know, I might have done that if you hadn't tried to fucking kill me.
Mode of hesitation. It's gonna cost you.
I can't.
We re-edited that. We used to show the break, and actually it was less brutal than when we didn't show it.
When you didn't show it?
Yeah, when it's left to your imagination, it's a lot worse.
Yeah, but just you can see the way that his arm's positioned. But yeah, you're right. This is so revealing, not only about the relationship, but about, again, who Joel has become. To go from a father who just cares about, keeping his nose down and keeping the job and playing by the rules, to being a guy who could just literally break some guy's arm over guns. It's just crazy.
Come on. Yeah, fuck those fireflies. Just go get them.
She loved doing that scene too. Annie loved that. She tried not to smile every time. And I love it's just business as usual. It's back to it. It's like, all right, so now what?
And we're about to meet the very talented Merle Dandridge.
Ah, Merle. Now, here's something interesting about this. Again, going back to the audition, that process. We saw a bunch of different girls, even girls that we had originally seen for Tess, we brought back to see.
And they're all really
Marlene.
good.
They're fantastic.
And then Merle came in and just,
and
there was no question.
And I wasn't there for that. And
Ashley can chime in on
Or
it.
no.
Ashley was part of the audition for Merle.
When she came in, it was hands down.
Yeah.
It's like, that's Marlene, come on.
It's funny that all three of us knew like right away that, yeah, she needs to play Marlene.
But you said we ended up setting up a special thing just for her.
Yeah.
Because you're like, you've got to see her. I want you to
Yeah,
see her.
we had callbacks, and she was busy. She couldn't make it. And we had a special day of callbacks just to bring her in because we felt really confident that she could do it.
'Cause I felt like she was the only one who didn't play it all either super tough.
Or street, yeah.
Yeah, she kind of had
Yeah,
the
she
perfect
really straddled that
combination.
line.
It was so great. But we did that first scenes in the audition, literally first take, first scene. And she exits. It's at the very end of the game, and she turns around, she exits, and I turn around, look at Neil. I was like, I just mouthed, "Are you kidding me?" It's like,
And I
it was
mouthed,
done.
"I told you so."
Yeah, she did such a great job. This is another kind of thing that I think is interesting that's happening in video games, where we see two really strong women characters, female characters that aren't being over-sexualized. They're just strong women.
Here we go. Ellie's introduction.
Yep.
And this stuff is all shot out of sequence. So it's I don't know, maybe you guys should talk about the process of how you get into that state.
I'm trying to remember that. I just really like the fact that the first time you see Ellie, you see her knife first.
Right.
I just think that's
You see that
kind
she's
of
a
awesome.
fighter.
Yeah. I forgot that was the first time that you saw Ellie. That was the first scene. That just from the get-go, she's fighting.
Yeah, but it's not just she's fighting because she really cares for Marlene. That was kind of
Yeah.
the crux of this, is that you see these two characters really care for one another. And I love in such a short time you see between Marlene and Ellie, there's this connection that's so
Right.
important because that has to carry through to the end of the game when Marlene shows up again.
Well, even like just the positioning of the two people. I mean, it's Joel and Tess versus Ellie and Marlene.
And just like, it's so interesting watching, right, Joel here doesn't even make eye contact with her. He doesn't even acknowledge her existence.
Right.
She's not crossing to that part of town. I want Joel to watch over her.
Whoa, I don't think that's the best
Ellie.
idea.
Our first fight.
Here we go.
Bullshit!
I was close with his brother Tommy. Said if I was ever in a jam, I could rely on him.
Was that before or after he left?
Just reminding the player, like this guy you saw in the beginning, Joel's brother, he's changed too, and he's been involved.
Yeah.
Just get hints of,
There's a falling out between the two
yeah.
of them.
And it's just, as you go on, you're starting to fill in that 20-year gap.
Just cargo, Joel.
No more talking.
Which is pretty true to your writing too, because I'm like, so what happened here? It's always, what do you think?
What do you think happened there? Because I have no idea.
I don't have the time to write it.
Don't take long. And you, stay close.
For Joel, right, that's a hint. It's like, I don't want to be around this kid,
Right.
right? Because some subconscious part of him knows I could get hurt here.
Is it?
First moment alone.
What does Joel do?
Time for bed.
Takes a nap.
I'm tired.
What are you doing?
Killing time.
I do really like this scene.
Well, what am I supposed to do?
I am sure you will figure that out.
It's a great moment.
It's another one of those moments too where it's like, it just feels like Joel is just always exhausted. Like this world is just bearing down on him.
But I love that moment too, where she points out the watch, where we get to establish that watch that.
Yeah, and
Sarah
that's something
gave
we
me.
didn't have in the beginning. That's actually something we inserted after the fact. Not for this scene, but there's another scene where we have that.
But I also love, like you said, the kind of the juxtaposition between Joel and Ellie, to where Joel's just, like you said, weary and exhausted, and you have this total opposite, almost antithetical thing of like this naivete and this childlike behavior that's wanting to explore. And it
here
shows up in this.
she's talking about having bad dreams, like the idea that they are both carrying this baggage with them, and it's how they first connect.
Look how dark it is. Can't be any worse out there. Can it?
What on earth do the Fireflies want with you?
Hey. Sorry it took so long. Soldiers fucking everywhere.
How's Marlene?
What a great moment. He finally addresses her, finally connects on that level, and that moment's interrupted.
Well, it's also the first time kind of Ellie If you think about it, opens up to him, she's saying, I'm scared, right? That was the subtext of that question.
That's true.
Go get some guns.
Don't do anything stupid.
Move.
Turn around, on your knees.
It's such an interesting thing that we're like 2 hours into the game and we're still the enemy, if there is one, or just other humans, just other people that are on other sides of the law, but there's no infected, there's no clickers, there's no anything.
Look the other way. We can make this worth your while.
Shut up. Tired of this shit. What's the ETA?
Couple minutes.
I love the attention to detail, the rain falling off their faces. She's the one that strikes out first.
Then it's interesting how Joel instinctively, when a gun is pointed at Ellie, he acts.
Yeah.
Again, there's something subconscious that he feels like he has to protect this girl, even if he doesn't realize it yet.
Here it is.
Jesus Christ. Marlene set us up?
So this is starting to build up that conflict between Joel and Tess.
Yeah.
And this is something we struggled in the story for a long time, is like, how do we motivate this guy that shouldn't really want to do this mission? How do we get him to take on this mission to carry Ellie across the country? And it was through Tess. So if we get Tess to really buy into this thing, and then we, Tess gets infected, then she can convince Joel to take this on. At least initially, at least until we can spend long enough time with Ellie so they can connect.
Yeah.
And then it becomes about something else.
I'll also say, Ashley, when we were doing this, the way that you conveyed fear, because that's a very scary situation that you're in, because you felt like your back was against the wall.
Yeah, this is where we really, this is where we kind of show you the difference between Joel and Tess.
Yeah, because you're starting to see Tess really kind of buy into this, and you see some hope.
Well, the thing I like about your performance here is you really get the sense of the conversation she's had with Marlene and the struggles she's been going through the past 3 weeks.
She said that they have their own little quarantine zone with doctors there still trying to find a cure.
It's where you see just deep inside how much Tess is desperate for any kind of redemption.
Whatever happened to me is that...
Remember, Ashley, we were talking about the scene and the idea that Ellie's not sure she believes in this thing. She feels this whole thing is insane and ridiculous.
I remember that.
I believe the direction I gave you was like, imagine you're giving yourself a compliment.
Yeah. If you as a person in real life found out you were the cure for mankind.
I'm kind of awesome.
Yeah, you
apparently,
wouldn't.
so
And
I am the
especially
Messiah.
in that 3 weeks, you wouldn't, it'd be hard to own that.
All right. Now watch your step as you're going out, because it's going to be a little...
Little brat.
I love the dynamics of this scene where it's like, Tess has this secret, right? She's bitten, she's not telling Joel or anybody yet. Joel here for the first, again, he's connected, he can't help it.
Oh, is that everything you hope
It's the first time he's like saying something semi-nice to Ellie.
But there's still this layer of cynicism behind it.
Can't deny that view.
Come on, this way.
He gets taken away by that childlike wonder. And this is something we added after the fact, the watch. The watch wasn't, we didn't have the watch at the time.
Yeah.
And Joel was just crossing his arms, and I asked the animator to like, oh, could you just flip his wrist and have him look at the watch?
Yeah.
This moment is reminding him of Sarah.
Yes, ma'am.
I love that it's almost a warning from Tess to Joel, like kind of like last words.
It's like this determination, and you're not sure why. What's
Yeah.
different now, Tess?
No. No, no, no.
Tess's desperation.
What happens now?
I love and it totally comes across without many words or anything, just through the expressions on Joel's face, which is, I've put up with this long enough.
Right.
This is over. I've indulged you enough,
Where's
Tess.
this lab of theirs?
Oh, she never said. She only mentioned that it was someplace out west.
What are we doing here? This is
Yeah,
not.
that calm, pacifying, trying to talk some sense into you.
I know that you are smarter than this.
Really?
Right.
Guess what? We're shitty people, Joel. It's been that way for a long
I
time.
love the fact that her character,
It is over, Tess.
she knows she's gonna die any minute, but she's still holding on to so much hope
Go
Yeah.
home.
I'm not
that, well, she's different.
going anywhere.
Right.
Look at her bite. The world could still change.
And it's kind of this theme that, like, this idea of, I've done all this crappy things, but it's all okay if I could do this one thing right.
Right.
And then that kind of moves over to Ellie. And we see that theme later when Ellie, like, talks about it can't be for nothing.
I got to point this out. Everybody else, because this was a part of the audition scene too, everyone else did that "don't touch me." They screamed it out. And I love the way she did that, where it was like that first, "don't touch me." And it's
Yeah.
just that realization. And I love the fact that Ellie's the one that figures it out, not Joel.
Oh, Christ.
And again, the back and forth Annie's doing between this freaking badass to such vulnerability and constantly jumping back and forth. And she brought that every take. We're all like, because every take she's like full on crying by the end of it.
She's incredible. You're right. She's such a badass, but she was so vulnerable at the same time. It's just such a,
Shows
Hard
two
thing to
sides of the
play.
same strength too.
God, I'm such an Annie fan.
You have to feel some sort of obligation to me, so you get her to Tommy's.
I remember you coming out of a take, and Troy's like, look at me, he's like, you don't understand. You're not right there staring into her eyes.
Yeah.
I can buy you some time, but you have to run.
You want us to just leave you here?
Yes.
There's no way that...
This moment where, like, Joel's like in denial. It's like, there's something I could do. They're not even understanding, like, she's gone. She's already gone. There's nothing he could do right now.
And also, she is just laser-eyed on Joel doing that, even though she's talking to Ellie.
No, just go. This fucking
Tess has to snap him out of it. It's like, you know that you have to do it.
Ellie.
And I believe this is the first time Joel refers to Ellie by her name. I don't think anywhere else in the game he does that. Beforehand. And again, it was important to stay. We stay with Tess, just showing. Here's her emotions finally coming through when Joel is gone. I like how I don't remember if we talked about this, but Ellie has just this clearly a problem with authority, where somebody's telling her what to do.
Yeah, for sure. I think that also, I have a problem with authority. So that came out a little bit in Ellie.
Tess. I don't even know what
Here's how this thing's gonna play out. You don't bring up Tess.
Yeah, that's so. Joel knows what he needs to do to survive, which is just let go. Needs to let go fast of these things, or they will kill you.
Don't tell anybody about your condition. They
That's
think you're
great.
crazy little
I love that he refers to
And lastly, you do
that as her
Condition.
when I say it.
He can barely acknowledge. Just
We're
he's still
trying to search for the term for it. You being the whole cure for humanity thing.
Good.
I love that he
Close
says
enough.
good, but the subtext is clearly like, all right, good enough.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna get out of this kid.
Good chance he could get us a car.
Okay.
Let's get a move on.